Named Benny and a man named Starzl. Benny Solis was the son of poor Spanish-American parents and had been born with biliary atresia. He too had a failed Kasai. Unfortunately, Benny was born in 1960, and he was doing what every child with a failed Kasai had done up to that point. They died. Benny was on a ventilator. His life was slowly ebbing away in the University of Colorado on a ventilator when a young man named Thomas Starzl approached Benny's mom and offered him an experimental new surgery, liver transplant. Benny's desperate mom agreed. Benny never had a shot. The obstacles on that first attempt at liver transplant proved to be unsurmountable. And young Benny Solis, who had endured so much in his life, died bleeding to death on the operating room as a young Starzl and his team tried frantically to stop the hemorrhaging. It was a fight Starzl had no chance of winning. Benny's blood just wouldn't clot. The 200 liver transplants in dogs he had done up to that point had not prepared him for the severe clotting deficiency that Benny had. Once the clotting obstacle had been overcome, Starzl reattempted transplants in 3 more patients that same year, this time in adults, and all those 3 patients died on the table as well. The team was devastated, and the world and many doctors turned against transplant as a viable option for end-stage liver disease. The chairman of medicine in Colorado refused to let Starzl operate on any of his patients because he thought it was unethical. Only the chairman of pediatrics of Colorado continued to support him. After a self-imposed 4-year moratorium, 8 liver transplants were attempted in children between 1967 and 1970, all in children. This time, all survived surgery, but 4 died, never having left the ICU. 3 more of the Sinishil group all died in the next 4 years: Julie Rodriguez and Terry Kemp of recurrent liver cancer, and Randy Bennett of chronic rejection. But those 3 children who survived to make it outside the hospital, albeit briefly, shocked the world. Liver transplants were indeed possible. The story of the 8th and final transplant in the series is even more astounding. It was carried out January 22nd, 1970. The little girl's name was Kimberly Hudson. She survives to this day, 39 years after her liver transplant. She is the oldest surviving liver transplant. So it was that the groundwork for what was to happen to Ishani was laid. Ishani was listed for a transplant in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. It was December of 2007, a short 9 months after we had noticed that tiny little yellow shoe in the corner of her eyes. I made plans to interrupt my fellowship and move to Pittsburgh so we could be close to the Pittsburgh transplant team as Ishani got worse. And then we got a call in the early morning hours of February 12th, 2008. A liver was available. We had 8 hours to get to Pittsburgh. I drove through the only blizzard of February across Pennsylvania, nearly becoming an organ donor at some points, but we made it. A little bit of black humor there, sorry. I'm sorry, you probably can't see too well in the back, but this is a picture of Ishani that morning of liver transplant, being held in her mom's arms. Another picture. This is Ishani and Pikai in the holding area right before she was taken away for her liver transplant. It was so hard to see her go. The image of her being carried away by the anesthesiologist is one I'll never forget. A very long day and night followed. Doctors Mazariegos, Cindy, who's here somewhere, Soltis and Bond worked through the night on Ishani. They told us afterwards that the liver transplant had worked well in Ishani, and they were very optimistic. I again hope the worst was behind us. I was again wrong, general theme with me. She stayed on a ventilator for 5 days and started to vigorously reject her new liver, days after receiving it. I had never seen her sicker. She barely moved in bed. Her belly was distended with liters of fluid, and we held our breath as the transplant team started her on massive immunosuppression to get the rejection under control. A repeat liver biopsy brought good news: the rejection was under control, but the following days and weeks turned to months in the hospital, as Ishani's weakened immune system provided no defense to repeated infections. Through it all, Ishani enjoyed the hospital food. Clearly there was something wrong with her. Every time she seemed to get better, she seemed to have a setback. We shuttled from the regular floor to the pediatric intensive care unit. This is one of those trips in a bed that seemed entirely too large for a little kid. We requested the big bed because me and Pika would sleep there every night. We even made it home twice, only to be readmitted shortly thereafter. These are all pictures of Ishani during that hospital stay. This is Ishani rummaging through a bag. But we finally made it out, and we stayed out. And that's when an amazing thing happened. Ishani started to do well, and amazingly stayed well. And finally, the pieces of my life slowly began to come together again. Maya's not here yet, Ishani. This golf attempt didn't last too long. She's not Tiger Woods. I know we're incredibly lucky. We were fortunate to live in a future made possible by the brilliance and dogged persistence of men like Thomas Starzl, George Mazariegos, Rakesh Sindhi, Kyle Soltis, Jeff Bond, and their team. Certainly, lesser men would have been broken by the early failures and pessimism accompanying the early years of transplant. I have no misconceptions of what Starzl and the transplant team institute have done. Where there was darkness, they shined light. Where there was unimaginable grief, they gave joy. And where there was only despair, they gave hope. I can't forget the heavy human cost, however, that the road to Ishani's success is built on. We owe an unpayable debt to the small broken bodies of so many that perished before her. 173 transplants were performed between 1963 and 1979. By 1992, only 29 survived. Benny Solis, Julie Rodriguez, Terry Kent, Randy Bennett. I wish I knew more of their names, and I find it shameful that history will not remember their names. Of course, the other tragedy inherent in all liver transplants is the circumstances surrounding organ donation. Ishani's new liver came from an 18-month-old boy whose life was tragically cut short. There are two courageous parents who, in their darkest hour, thought to save someone else. This debt too I cannot repay. This is Ishani at her 1-year post-transplant visit. This gentleman right here is Dr. Thomas Starzl. We were lucky enough to meet him. And this is Dr. George Mazariegos, who is the head of the transplant team who did Ishani's transplant. Dr. Cindy was too busy seeing patients to get a picture with me. There's Dr. Cindy. I don't know what the future holds for Ishani. It is something I struggle with on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. I spend most of my time wondering about what Ishani cannot do. I realize I do her and the struggle she represents a disservice in doing so. Indeed, for her sake, instead of seeing things as they are and asking why, I hope to dream things that never were and ask why not. Thanks so much again for being here.